We shall now move into the oculoplasty segment. Our first speaker is Dr. Santosh Honawar, who would be talking on how to lift the veil on drooping eyelids, preferred practice guidelines. On to you, Dr. Santosh. I thought I needn't introduce you, you're just too famous.
Wow, thank you, Chitra. I will be talking about preferred practices in congenital ptosis that we follow. When you have a patient of congenital ptosis in front of you, these are the 5 questions that you ask and answer yourself. What is the severity of ptosis? Are there any complicating factors? What surgery would I perform? Is the surgery that I'm going to perform going to be safe for the patient? And what is the expected outcome? Am I going to fully correct or am I going to leave it undercorrected? For that, you need to go through a list of clinical tests, which are I, I don't have time to enumerate, but let's go to the management straight. The first question is when to operate. If you have a newborn brought to you with bilateral severe ptosis, would you operate at that time? Generally not. You reassess the child once the child is fit for anesthesia at about 6 weeks, 3 months, 6 months, and operate only if there is a head posture of this sort and the child is not able to clear the visual axis. Otherwise, early surgery is not really required in bilateral symmetrical ptosis. Whereas if it is bilateral asymmetrical or unilateral severe, then surgery should be done as soon as the child is fit for anesthesia, because otherwise you'll end up with deep amblyopia. This child has chin elevation with right eye ptosis. After surgery, you can see that the ptosis is corrected and the chin elevation also reverses. And this is just to make sure that the amblyopia does not develop. This is a reversible surgery using a suture material such as Ethibond. Then when you go to adults or older children, there are several situations. In a patient with mild ptosis, say 2 millimeter ptosis with 8 to 10 millimeter levator action, the first thing that you do is a phenylephrine test. If phenylephrine test is positive, then you go for mullerectomy. If it is negative, then the option is Fassler-Savart procedure. The classic indication is 2 millimeter ptosis, 10 or more millimeter of levator action. The standard thumb rule is that you resect for every millimeter of ptosis, 2 millimeter of the tarsus and accompanying conjunctiva would be resected, with another thumb rule that at least 4 millimeter of the residual tarsus should be left so that the lid remains stable. This is how the surgery is performed, simply using a RF electrode or scissors and knife, and that's how the patient looks. This is a very elegant surgery. You should not have any worry about dry eye, etc., because you would have still left 4 millimeter of the tarsus with enough meibomian glands. In levator surgery, we have several variants. For congenital ptosis specifically, we have levator resection and Whitnell sling. The classic indication for levator resection are ptosis more than 2 millimeter and levator action at least 4 millimeter or more. And there are 2 approaches. For patients who already have a lid crease and reasonable amount of levator action, you are better off doing a conjunctival approach. But for patients who don't have a lid crease, severe ptosis and poor levator action, then you would prefer a skin approach. Then where to place the eyelid is always a question. The standard thumb rule is that for patients who have 6 to 7 millimeter levator action, you place the lid exactly where you want it postoperatively. If the levator action is poor, you overcorrect slightly. If the levator action is better than 6 to 7 millimeter, you undercorrect slightly, because poorer the levator action, postoperative droop is common. If the levator action is better, postoperative lift is common. So this is the baseline: 6 to millimeter, 7 millimeter levator action. Leave the lid exactly where you want it to be postoperatively. This is under GA, but same thing can be adapted for local anesthesia as well. This is a patient who has undergone levator resection. Now, for patients who have very severe ptosis, poor levator action, they are candidates for tarsofrontal sling, but they're not using the brow preoperatively because of severe amblyopia. They have no stimulus at all. Then you do what is called a Whitnell sling. Whitnell sling is performed internally. Whitnell's ligament is attached to the tarsus internally through a skin approach, and it works beautifully well. For patients who have severe ptosis with poor levator action, unilateral or bilateral, then we have tarsofrontal sling. These are the qualities of an ideal sling material, but the question is whether to use fasciolata or silicone. Both are equally good. Silicone I prefer because it is reversible and adjustable, whereas fasciolata, being biointegrable, is not reversible and not adjustable. We use a typical pentagon technique for silicone sling. It's a fairly simple surgery. Leave the lid about 1 millimeter from the limbus and you would get nice results, unilateral or bilateral. This is a patient with unilateral severe ptosis with silicone sling. So ptosis, the assessment is very important. You always have to assess the patient properly. and set a goal for yourself and to the patient. Perfection is an unreasonable goal in ptosis surgery, and you should realize that and explain this in front of a mirror to the patient repeatedly until the patient and the family understand this very, very clearly. If you're a beginner surgeon, always follow a thumb rule and modify the thumb rule as and when you start getting your own results, and based on that, you can tweak the thumb rule a little bit. Anticipate and preempt complications and never hesitate to adjust early. If you have a undercorrection or overcorrection, which you notice in the post-operative period, never wait for the tincture of time. It really doesn't work. You have to go back and adjust it early. And if you adjust it early in the first week itself, it's not a resurgery. It's a simple 5-minute topical anesthesia adjustment. Thank you so much.
To Dr. Grover or Dr. Santosh. If unilateral ptosis correction, if you're doing, it may look symmetrical when you look straight, but in down gaze, it's not symmetrical. No, so would you do a bilateral surgery or you do a unilateral?
Generally, patients don't agree for bilateral surgery, but yes, in sling surgery, especially if you do a unilateral severe case, there are options to do bilateral sling as well without disinserting the levator. Well, if you disinsert the levator and do bilateral sling, it is very drastic measure for a normal lid. So without disinserting the levator, you can still do a loose sling so that when the patient looks down, it becomes symmetrical. But most of the patients don't agree for it, and Dr. Grover has some experience doing that.
Yes, that's why. Dr. Grover, your thoughts on that?
Well,
I liked your talk, Santosh. For a non-oculoplasty person, I learned a lot.
yeah, Gagar mein Sagar kind of talk. So beautiful talk.
Very good talk. Yeah.
For those who are willing for a bilateral surgery, you can, for severe cases or for jaw winking cases where you disinsert the levator and convert it into a severe ptosis, you can do a bilateral procedure, provided the patient understands that this is for the purpose of creating a symmetry in downward gaze and in sleep. So then you disinsert and do a bilateral fascia lata sling. One disadvantage of just putting in a sling is that sometimes that effort is lacking on the ptotic side to lift the eyelid by using the brow action, and you can still have an apparent undercorrection. So for that reason, sometimes a disinsertion of the normal muscle may be essential in severe cases to get a good symmetry, but that of course cannot be a universal formula.